The moment I saw my seat assignment, row 14, section D, right by service area, my stomach folded in on itself like somebody had tightened a rope around my ribs. My son, my only child, my baby I raised working 2 jobs and packing lunches with nickels and prayer, was getting married in the kind of luxury venue you only see in magazine spreads. Crystal chandeliers, ivory roses spilling from archways, champagne walls that refilled themselves. And me? I was placed so far back, I might as well have been watching the ceremony on a security camera. The usher didn't even look me in the eyes when he pointed. "Right there, ma'am, past the catering carts." Past the catering carts. At my own son's wedding. I kept clutching the invite between my fingers, rubbing my thumb over the embossed gold letters like maybe I'd somehow misread them. I hadn't. I was supposed to be sitting near the front. My son himself told me over the phone last month, "Mama, you'll be right beside Mrs. Alvarez, my mentor. You deserve that." But as I walked toward row 14, I saw the truth. The front section was filled with people I didn't recognize. Glossy people. People wearing designer everything, people who clinked diamonds when they turned their heads. Not one of them looked like family. Not one of them looked like me. I tried to lift my chin, breathe slow, and remember that I was here for my son, not the approval of strangers who smelled like imported perfume and entitlement. But I had barely lowered myself into the scratched white folding chair before I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Clara, my soon-to-be daughter-in-law. She looked breathtaking, sleek bun, flawless makeup, gown hugging her like it was stitched by angels themselves, but the way she glanced down at me made me feel like I wasn't supposed to be there, like I was a stain she couldn't scrub out in time. She leaned close, whispering with that clipped, perfect tone she used whenever she wanted to sound polite but cutting. "Your poverty will embarrass us. This is why we had to seat you back here." Every nerve in my body twitched. I swallowed hard. "Clara, I'm his mother." She smiled, icy and fragile like glass about to crack, "which is why I'm giving you a warning. Keep your emotions quiet. No crying, no shouting his name, no causing attention. And please don't talk to the guests in the front rows. They'll assume you're staff." The words hit me so fast I didn't even have space to react. All I could manage was a whisper. Why would they assume that? She took one slow look at my thrift store dress, the one I ironed twice, the one I thought looked elegant enough. "Because," she said softly, "you look practical." Practical. That was a new way to call somebody poor. She placed her manicured hand on my shoulder like she was blessing me and said, "Enjoy the ceremony from here. It's safer." Then she glided away. My chest felt tight, so tight I thought I might crack open from humiliation. I wanted to walk out. I wanted to hide. I wanted to scream. But I stayed glued to that chair because leaving would ruin my son's day, and I refused to be the villain in someone else's fairy tale. But inside, my heart was unraveling. Row 14 smelled like garlic from the warming trays behind me. I could hear the clatter of pans. A server brushed past my elbow carrying a stack of plates. Every time someone turned, they had to squeeze by me like I was part of the banquet equipment. I kept my eyes on the aisle, pretending not to feel the sting, pretending I didn't hear 2 glam women whisper, "Who is she?" Probably catering. Pretending I didn't wish I had never come. But then, a tall man in a black suit approached my row. He was handsome in a quiet way, silver at his temples, deep brown skin, warm eyes that held something gentle. He sat right beside me, smoothing his jacket like he belonged exactly there. I frowned slightly. "I think you may be in the wrong seat." He shook his head once. "No, I'm right where I need to be." Before I could reply, he leaned closer and said in a hushed, steady voice, "Let's pretend we came together." My breath hitched. "What? Why?" He nodded toward the front row. "Look." I followed his gaze, straight to my son, standing at the altar, adjusting his cufflinks as he whispered to someone beside him. His eyes swept the room, then landed on me. And when he saw me sitting beside this man, this stranger, his entire face turned white, his mouth dropped open, his eyes widened like he'd seen a ghost or a secret unraveling right in front of him. Whatever he saw in that moment froze something deep behind his expression. The man in black murmured, "Just trust me." My hand tightened around the edge of my seat. My heart pounded. And as the music swelled, as the wedding planner hurried the bridesmaids into position, and my son continued staring at me like his entire world had just tilted, I realized something was happening here. Something I didn't understand yet. Something that was about to explode this perfect wedding wide open.
I don't think I breathed for a full 10 seconds after my son's eyes locked on me. He wasn't just surprised. He looked terrified. Like seeing me in that seat next to that man was somehow the worst thing that could have happened on his wedding day. The man beside me kept his posture calm, hands folded, gaze straight ahead as if the two of us truly had arrived together. And the more I watched him, the more I felt like he knew something. Something about this wedding, this arrangement, maybe even about my son, that I didn't. "Who are you?" I whispered without turning my head. He replied just as quietly, "A friend." A pause, "But not of the bride." That sent a chill up my spine. I glanced toward the aisle again. My son was trying to mask his shock, but his eyes kept darting back to me like he couldn't look anywhere else. One of his groomsmen nudged him, whispering something. He nodded stiffly, but the muscles in his jaw told me he was one breath away from panic. Then Clara appeared at the end of the aisle, radiant and smug as ever. The crowd gasped softly, swooning over her gown, her bouquet, her elegance. She walked like she owned the world and had already decided who didn't belong in it. Her eyes swept past me, then snapped back. In the moment she noticed the man in black sitting beside me, her expression splintered. She faltered mid-step, just for a second, but long enough for me to catch it. Something inside her broke. Fear? Rage? Recognition? All three? The man beside me didn't look at her, but I saw the slightest smirk tug at the corner of his mouth. Clara recovered quickly, lifting her chin, but she didn't stop staring at us, specifically at him. Her grip tightened around her bouquet until the roses trembled. Whatever history was between these two, it was something ugly. The music shifted softer as the officiant raised his hands, calling everyone to settle. Clara forced her eyes forward and glided toward the altar, but not before cutting me the sharpest, most venomous look she'd ever given. One that said, "You're not supposed to be with him. You're not supposed to know him. You're not supposed to matter." The ceremony began, but my mind wasn't on the vows or the flowers or the audience leaning forward in admiration. I kept replaying the icy recognition in her eyes, the tension radiating off my son, the strange, calm confidence of the man beside me. "Why did she look at you like that?" I whispered. He inhaled slowly through his nose before answering, "Because Clara has spent years pretending I don't exist." My heartbeat kicked up again. "You know her?" I asked. "Oh yes," he said quietly. "Better than she wants anyone in this room to know." The room faded away for a moment as I absorbed his words. The elegant guests, the towering floral arrangements, the violinists, all of it blurred into background noise. I could hear nothing but the thump of my heart and the low hum of dread creeping up my spine. "Why sit with me?" I whispered. He folded his hands. "Because she counted on you being alone, humiliated, easy to ignore." "And you didn't want that?" He finally turned to look at me with eyes that held an odd mix of sympathy and warning. "No, someone needs to see her for who she really is." The officiant's voice boomed. "We gather today to celebrate." Clara flinched again. My son swallowed hard. The man in black sat perfectly still, and I sat there thinking, what have I walked into? What has my son walked into? Just then, a server behind me dropped a tray with a metallic crash, jolting everyone. Clara whipped her head around, giving another glare in my direction, because of course she would find some way to blame me for noise in a room full of staff. But as she turned back, I saw something in her expression, a flicker of desperation. Like she wasn't afraid of the wedding falling apart, she was afraid of a secret coming out. The man beside me leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. "It's starting," he murmured. "What's starting?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he nodded subtly toward the altar. My son had stepped back from Clara. Not a big step, not dramatic, but enough for me to see it. Enough for anyone really watching to see that something had shifted. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't glowing with love. He wasn't present. He was staring at us again. At me. At this man. Like two ghosts had shown up to haunt his perfect day. Then, he said something to the officiant. Clara whipped toward him, eyes wide, mouth open in silent fury. The guest murmured. The officiant blinked, confused. And my son, my sweet boy, shook his head slowly, almost like he was bracing to reveal something he wasn't supposed to say. Then he looked directly at me, and I saw a truth rising in his eyes, a truth that was about to break this wedding wide open. My son's mouth opened, and for a moment, I thought he was about to call off the wedding. The whole room leaned forward in perfect, stunned silence. Even the string quartet froze mid-bow. Clara clutched his arm with a smile so tight it looked painted on, but her fingers dug into him like claws. "Sweetheart," she hissed under her breath, loud enough for the first few rows to hear, including me. "Don't you dare." My son didn't look at her. His eyes were still locked on the man beside me, and whatever emotion swirled there was raw and tormented. Fear? Shame? Guilt? Recognition? I couldn't tell. But he was sweating under the lights, his throat bobbing hard with every swallow. The officiant cleared his throat. "Is everything all right?" "No," my son whispered. A ripple ran through the crowd, soft gasps, whispers, shifting bodies. Clara tightened her grip until her knuckles whitened. "Elias," she muttered through clenched teeth, "you will smile and finish the ceremony. Stop embarrassing me." But he didn't smile. Instead, he stepped out of her reach. My heart thudded so loud I could barely hear anything else. The man beside me inhaled deeply like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. "What's happening?" I whispered. He didn't answer. His eyes were still locked on the altar with razor-sharp focus. Up front, Clara tried to laugh off the tension, glancing toward the guests. She said, "He's just nervous, cold feet, that's all." But her voice trembled. My son finally said it, louder this time, steady enough for everyone to hear. "Mom shouldn't be sitting back there." If the chandeliers had crashed down from the ceiling, it couldn't have created a bigger shock. Clara blinked rapidly, her face draining of color. "Elias, what are you doing?" He ignored her. "She raised me," he said, voice rising. "She sacrificed everything, and you put her next to the catering staff?" The crowd murmured louder now, disapproving whispers, judgmental eyes shifting in Clara's direction. She tried to maintain her composure, but the mask had cracks now, thin lines of fury carving through her polished demeanor. That wasn't my decision, she lied, voice shaking. The man beside me let out a soft, dry laugh under his breath. She never stops lying. My skin prickled. You really do know her, I whispered. He nodded once. Very well. Back at the altar, my son rubbed his forehead like he was in pain. Clara, you said my mother would be seated with the other parents. She stiffened. Well, plans changed. You changed them, he corrected. Her mouth twitched. Someone in the front row whispered, "That's cold," and another nodded. Clara snapped her head toward the guests, eyes flashing with indignation, but she quickly forced her face back into something polite. "This is all a misunderstanding," she insisted. My son looked unconvinced. He looked heartbroken. Then his gaze slid back to me and the man beside me, and that's when I saw something flicker behind his confusion. Recognition. But not of me. Of him. My son's eyes widened. And this time, the shock wasn't mixed with fear. It was mixed with something deeper. Something old. Something unresolved. He took one shaky step toward us. "Why is he here?" my son demanded, voice cracking. The room erupted with whispers. Clara's head whipped toward my row so fast her veil swayed. "You," she spat at the man beside me, "you weren't invited." He tilted his head calmly, like her anger didn't touch him. "I go where truth is needed." My chest tightened. Someone tell me what's going on. But no one did. Clara marched down the aisle toward us, heels stabbing into the floor. "You need to leave," she ordered the man, "now." He didn't move, not an inch. Instead, he looked at me with something that wasn't fear or anger, but sadness. "I'm sorry you're seeing it this way," he murmured, but it was bound to come out. My pulse hammered in my ears. "What are you seeing?" Clara jabbed a finger at him. "If you say one word." He lifted a brow. "What will you do, Clara? Cut me off? Ignore me? Pretend you don't know me again?" The crowd gasped. Clara's face went white, paper white, bridal dress white. She staggered back one step, then two, like his words were physical blows. My son looked between them, breathing hard. "Clara, what is he talking about?" She opened her mouth, but no sound came out, just a soft, broken puff of air. The man stood slowly, smoothing his jacket as he faced my son. "You've asked who I am, and you deserve the truth." He paused, looking between me and the altar. "My name is Marcus Hale." The room still. Even the air seemed to stop moving. "And 29 years ago," he continued, voice steady, "before Clara ever met you, before this wedding was even imagined," he looked straight at Clara, "I was her husband." My entire world dropped out from under me. Clara's bouquet slipped from her shaking hands. My son stumbled back as if someone had punched him. "No," Clara whispered hoarsely. "No! No, Marcus, you promised!" But it was too late. The truth had finally burst through the seams she'd stitched shut. And everything was about to crash. For a moment, the entire wedding froze in place, like someone had pressed pause on reality. Guests stared, jaws dropped, clutching their pearls, programs, or each other. Even the violinists had stopped moving, Only Clara was in motion, stumbling backward, shaking her head so violently her veil whipped around like a torn flag in the wind. You can't be here," she whispered, voice cracking like thin ice. "Marcus, you can't. This wasn't supposed to happen. You were supposed to stay away." Marcus stood tall, hands clasped calmly in front of him, as though the chaos around us wasn't ripping through the room. "You left me," he said gently, yet each word landed like a hammer. "Disappeared, without a word, and then I find you living an entirely new life, pretending I never existed." My son's face twisted in confusion and horror. "Clara, is this true? You were married before?" "It wasn't," she swallowed hard. "It wasn't like that. You don't understand." "Then explain it," Elias snapped, voice trembling. "Explain why a man is standing at our wedding saying he's your husband." Clara's lips trembled. Her hands flew to her temples. She looked less like a bride now and more like a cornered animal. "Marcus, please, just go. You're ruining everything." He let out a breath, not angry, not triumphant, but weary. "I'm not here to ruin anything. I'm here because your lies are hurting people. Him," he nodded at Elias, "and her." He looked at me gently. My breath hitched. Clara's eyes flared with something vicious. "Her?" she spat, pointing at me. "This wedding is at a certain standard." "She's his mother," Marcus said, voice quiet but firm. "She belonged more than anyone." The room murmured again. A few people nodded. Clara's face twisted into something ugly, panic and rage woven together. Elias turned slowly toward her. "Clara, answer the question. Is he your husband?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her eyes began darting around the room, searching for an escape, for someone to rescue her, to rearrange the moment into something she could control. "It was years ago," she finally croaked. "A mistake. I left. We weren't even—" "Married?" Marcus cut in. "We were. Legally. Permanently. You vanished, took money that wasn't yours, avoided my calls, blocked my family, and then you show up here pretending you're someone new." Several guests gasped loudly. Someone in the second row whispered, "She's a scammer." Another murmured, "That poor man, and now the groom." Clara snapped at them, "Mind your business." Elias ran a shaking hand through his hair. "Clara, do you know what you've done? You hid a whole marriage, a whole life, from me, from my mother, from everyone." Clara lunged toward him, grabbing his arm. "Baby, listen." He yanked his arm away. "Don't call me that." For the first time, Clara looked genuinely scared. Marcus exhaled deeply. "Elias, I didn't come here to destroy your wedding. I came because I couldn't let her build another life on lies." "But why sit with my mother?" Elias asked. Marcus's eyes softened. "Because Clara was trying to isolate her, embarrass her, push her out, and I wasn't going to let her be alone in that." My eyes burned with sudden tears. No one had stood up for me like that in a long time. Not since Elias was young, tugging my hand protectively whenever someone talked down to me. Clara spun toward me suddenly, her face crumpling into something desperate and venomous. "This is your fault," she snapped. "You brought him. You must have contacted him." "I've never met him before today," I said, feeling my voice steady for the first time. "You're the one hiding skeletons, not me." Laughter rippled through the audience, not cruel, more like stunned disbelief. Elias pressed his fingers to his eyes. "Clara, what else aren't you telling me?" Her breath hitched. She looked between all of us. "I did what I had to survive, to move up, to make sure I never went back to... To what? I asked quietly. To the kind of life I live? Her jaw clenched. That's why you pushed me back here? That's why you were ashamed of me? Because I reminded you of the person you used to be? Clara said nothing. Her silence was the answer. Marcus stepped closer to the aisle. Tell him the rest, he urged. Tell him why you didn't want his mother near the front. Clara's eyes widened with fresh panic. Marcus, don't. But it was too late. Tell him, Marcus repeated. Tell him that you didn't want his mother seated up front because she was afraid she'd overhear things from your friends, your contacts, the ones who know exactly how you used to make your money. The room fell dead silent. Elias turned pale. What money? He whispered. Clara froze, then bolted. Just turned on her jeweled heel and ran up the aisle, knocking over a floral arrangement. Guests shouting as she shoved past them. Elias shouted, Clara, stop! But she didn't. She ran straight toward the doors, and the moment they slammed behind her, Marcus looked at me. She's running, he said quietly, because the truth is chasing her now. And my son, my beautiful boy, he took one trembling step after her, then another, then stopped. He turned to me, chest heaving, eyes wet with hurt and disbelief. Mama, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what he meant, but my heart already knew this wedding wasn't just falling apart. It was only the beginning.
For a long moment, no one moved. Guests looked from my son to the slammed doors, unsure whether to chase the fleeing bride or stay seated and pretend the wedding still had a pulse. The violinists exchanged a helpless glance, bows hovering awkwardly. Elias wiped his face with shaking fingers, his breath uneven. I need a moment, he muttered, stepping away from the altar. Take all the time you need, the officiant said softly, closing his book as if a funeral had just begun. Marcus remained exactly where he was, hands clasped, eyes fixed on Elias with a mixture of pity and resolve. I could tell he had expected chaos, but not this level of devastation, not the way my son's world was crumbling in front of all these strangers. Elias stumbled down the steps, his face flushed with humiliation and heartbreak. When he reached me, he didn't speak. He simply leaned into me, resting his forehead against my shoulder like he had when he was 5 years old and scraped both knees trying to race down a hill. Mama, he whispered again, voice breaking. I'm sorry. I should have listened. I should have seen how she treated you. I cupped his face gently. Hush, this isn't your fault. But she kept you away, he said, choking. She made you sit at the back, act like you didn't belong. And I let her disrespect you. I let her make you small. You didn't know, I murmured. You were in love. That's not an excuse, his voice cracked. I was blind. Behind us, guests had begun to murmur. An aunt dabbed her eyes. Someone whispered, Poor thing, while another said, Imagine finding out like this. Elias clenched his jaw and stepped back, wiping his tears. I need to know everything, he said, turning to Marcus. All of it. Now. Marcus took a step forward. Not here. He glanced around meaningfully at the rows of gawking faces. Elias nodded, his voice hoarse. Then come with me. But before they moved, the doors at the back of the hall burst open with a loud crash. Clara stumbled back inside. Her hair was disheveled, veil torn, mascara streaking down her cheeks. She looked wild, half desperate, half furious. 2 security guards trailed behind her, clearly trying to calm her down. Don't listen to them, she screamed, pointing at Marcus. He's lying! He's obsessed with me! He's stalking me! Clara,
Elias said, his voice low and tired. "Stop!" "No!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "You don't understand. He wants to ruin me. He wants to control me." "That's enough," Marcus said firmly. Clara lunged toward him with a sound that wasn't quite a scream and not quite a sob. "You don't get to talk. You don't get to show up and destroy everything I've built." Elias stepped protectively in front of me. A few guests gasped as Clara pointed at me again. "And you, this is your fault too. You've been poisoning him against me from the start." "I haven't said a word," I said quietly. "That's exactly it. You just stand there looking pathetic so everyone will feel sorry for you." "Clara," Marcus interrupted again, voice cold now, "tell him the truth." "I am!" she shouted. "No, the real truth. About why you married me, why you left, why you're here." Clara's breathing became erratic. Her eyes darted wildly around the room. I needed to survive," she whispered. "I needed money. I needed a way out. I needed something better." Elias looked like he'd been punched. "So you used me?" "No!" she cried. "I love you." "You don't," he said, his voice hollow. "You love what I have." Clara swayed on her feet. "I love you," she repeated, but it was weaker this time, sounding more like a plea than a truth. Elias squeezed his eyes shut. "Clara, I can't do this." "What?" she croaked. "I can't marry you." The room erupted in whispers. Clara shook her head violently. "No! No! No! Elias, you love me. You said you love me. I meant it," he said softly. "But love can't survive lies. Not lies this big." Clara stared at him, trembling. "Elias, don't do this. Don't throw me away." "I'm not throwing you away," he whispered. "You threw yourself away the moment you decided the truth didn't matter." She let out a sharp cry like an animal that had just been cornered, then collapsed to her knees. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please, please. I can change. I can start over. Please." Elias looked at her with shattered compassion, the kind that comes when you realize someone has broken you so deeply you can't fix them anymore. Finally, he turned to the security guards. "Please escort her out." Clara screamed, fought, begged, but eventually she was carried out, her sobs echoing down the hall until the doors slammed once more. Silence returned, heavy, suffocating. Marcus stepped forward. "Elias, I'm sorry you found out this way." My son nodded numbly, staring at the floor. He murmured, "It had to come out eventually." Then he turned to me, eyes red, voice fragile, and said, "Mama, can we go home?" And for the first time that entire day, I felt like his mother again, like I mattered. I took his hand. "Yes," I said softly, "let's go home." But deep inside, I knew the story wasn't over, because not all messes end at the altar. Some begin there. For a long moment, no one moved. The guests shifted uncomfortably, whispering, the tension crackling like static in the air. Elias stood in the aisle, shoulders tense, breathing hard as if trying to keep himself from collapsing. Marcus was the only one who looked calm. Too calm, like a man who had seen storms far worse than this one. "Elias," he said gently, "you need to breathe." But my son shook his head violently. Don't tell me to breathe. My entire wedding just..." He swallowed, voice cracking. She lied about everything, everything. He ran a trembling hand through his hair, pacing a few steps before turning to me. Mama, he whispered, and the word hit the room like a prayer. Why didn't I listen to you? Why didn't I see it? Why did I let her treat you like that? Mijo, I said softly, stepping closer. You loved her. That is never a crime. He blinked hard, tears spilling. He looked so young in that moment, no longer the strong, confident adult man, but the boy who used to hide behind my legs when strangers yelled. She didn't just lie to me, she humiliated you. She made you sit in the back, and I let her. I let her. His voice shattered. I reached for his hands. Listen to me, I said gently. You didn't let her do anything. Manipulators don't ask permission. They make you believe their way is the only way. He dropped his forehead to my shoulder and sobbed. Not dramatic, movie-style sobs, but quiet, agonized ones. The kind that come from a wound so deep it pierces the bone. I held him, rubbing his back, feeling the eyes of the entire wedding on us. Then unexpectedly, Marcus stepped closer. If it helps, you're not the first person she fooled, and you won't be the last. Elias lifted his head slowly, studying the man who had detonated his wedding. Why help us? He asked, hoarse. You could have just let me marry her and suffer. Marcus inhaled deeply. His jaw flexed. Because I know what it's like to lose everything to someone who lies with a smile, and I wasn't going to watch her do to you what she did to me, or worse. A chill crawled down my spine. What do you mean worse? I asked. He hesitated. For the first time, Marcus looked unsure. I wasn't going to say this, he said carefully, but you need to know, both of you. Elias stiffened. Marcus's voice dropped to a low, controlled tone. Clara didn't just run from me. She ran from debt collectors, dangerous ones. She owes money, serious money, to people you do not want involved in your life. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Elias paled. What kind of debt collectors? He whispered. Marcus's silence was the answer. And suddenly, everything made sense. Her obsession with appearances, her panic over guest lists, her need to control every detail, her desire to marry into a stable, respectable family, her desperation to keep me, us, in the background. Because she wasn't just hiding a marriage, she was hiding a threat. A threat that, thanks to her, now had my son's name and our family's address. Elias stepped back, eyes wild. So what? You're saying she tried to marry me as an escape plan? Marcus didn't blink. Yes. A loud murmur surged through the guests. Someone cursed. Someone else said, "We need to call the police." Elias pressed a hand to his chest, breathing unevenly. I need to find her. I need answers. No, Marcus said sharply, stepping in front of him. You chase her now, and you put yourself in danger. She's still my... Elias stopped mid-sentence, voice cracking. I placed a hand on his cheek. You are not chasing someone who runs from the truth, I said. Not today. He leaned into my hand, exhausted. Marcus nodded once. The authorities will be looking for her soon enough. She won't get far. The room fell into uneasy silence. Then the wedding planner, a petite woman with trembling hands, stepped up to us cautiously. Should we dismiss the guests? She asked gently. Elias wiped his eyes, squared his shoulders, and took a deep breath. No, he said. The planner blinked. The guests stiffened. My heart lurched. Elias! He looked at me, expression torn but determined. I'm not letting today be defined by her lies. She walked out. I didn't. He turned toward the stage, walked back up the aisle alone, and when he reached the altar, he removed the ring from his pocket. He held it for a long, quiet moment. Then he set it down on the empty pedestal meant for their unity candle. The sound of metal lightly tapping glass echoed like a full stop at the end of a chapter. Elias turned back to the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice steady but raw, "the wedding won't be happening. But you're welcome to stay, eat, drink, and turn this day into something else, something real, something honest." A few guests clapped softly. Others nodded solemnly. But then, Elias met my eyes. "Mama," he said gently, "come stand with me." My breath caught. "I should have had you next to me from the beginning." The guests parted for me like water. As I stepped up beside my son, his arm wrapping protectively around mine, Marcus watched us quietly from the side. And for the first time that day, I felt safe. But deep down, a whisper nagged at me. If Clara was running, someone might come looking. And they might come here.
Interior, luxury wedding ballroom. Later. The reception begins. Guests glide across the floor, waiters in white gloves serving champagne. I remain seated at row 14, the only table without a centerpiece. Michael, 40s, the man in the black suit who sat beside me, remains close, keeping up the act that we came together. I still don't know why he's helping me. Emma and Andrew enter the ballroom to applause. My son's face is stiff. His eyes keep flicking toward me and the man beside me. Tension builds. A waiter approaches me, hesitant. "Ma'am, the couple asked that you remain seated during photos. They said it would be simpler." I swallow hard. "Emma, OSS," voice cutting through the room. "It's better this way. We don't want anything distracting in the wedding album." She grips Andrew's arm. Andrew looks humiliated, but not at me, at her. Michael leans closer, quiet. "They can't treat you like this, and he knows it." I blink at him. "Why are you helping me?" Michael hesitates, then pulls something from his inner jacket pocket. A wedding program, but not the printed one. A private schedule, filled with notes, initials, financial details. Because I'm not just a guest. He flips it open. Michael continued, "I'm here because someone hired me to investigate Emma and her family." My heart thuds. Investigate? For what? Michael? For fraud, manipulation, exploitation, and your son, unfortunately, is tangled in the middle. My breath catches. "Michael, I didn't expect to find you shoved in the back row like hired help, but once I did, it told me everything I needed." Across the room, Emma stares at me with thinly veiled disgust. Michael watches her too. "Michael, get ready, because before this night ends, everything they built is going to come crashing down." The lights dim as the MC announces the first dance. My hands tremble, and Michael leans in with one last whisper. "Michael, stay close. When the truth breaks, you're going to need someone on your side." Fade out. I stepped into the grand ballroom again, guided by Mr. Hale's steady hand on my shoulder. Conversations buzzed instantly, whispers slicing through the glittering air like needles. There she is, the groom's mother. Why is she with him? Isn't she the one they hid in the back row? I pretended I didn't hear any of it. But my son, he heard
everything. He hurried down the staircase toward me, desperation in every step. "Mom, please, can we talk privately?" His voice cracked, as if he already knew he'd failed me. Mr. Hale, surprisingly gentle, leaned close and murmured, "Go on, I'll stay close." His tone was protective, something I hadn't felt in years. My son pulled me to a quiet alcove. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know Clara seated you there. She said you preferred a quieter place, and I believed her." His eyes glistened. "I wanted you in the front row. I thought you were." For a moment, I just looked at him. My boy who used to cry when I missed his school plays because I was working double shifts. "You let her make every decision," I said softly, "even decisions about me." He swallowed hard. "I know." We stood there, a silence that felt heavier than all the chandeliers above us. "Mom," he whispered, voice shaking, "did she ever treat you badly before today?" I hesitated. In the mirror behind him, I saw Clara, watching, listening, jaw clenched like she wanted to shatter glass with her teeth. And for the first time that night, I felt something new awaken in me. Courage. "Yes," I finally said. "She did." My son froze, but I didn't stop. "She didn't just treat me badly today. She's been keeping you away from me for months." He blinked, stunned, betrayal spreading across his face like a shadow. Behind him, Clara's expression cracked, panic replacing arrogance. My son turned around, and the wedding suddenly didn't feel like a celebration anymore. It felt like the moment everything broke open. The ballroom felt colder now, even with hundreds of warm lights bouncing off crystal chandeliers. I sat frozen in row 14, my hands trembling slightly against the tablecloth. Ethan hadn't returned yet. His bride, Madison, was still at the head table, smiling for the photographer, pretending nothing unusual had happened. But I could see the stiffness in her posture, the way she kept glancing toward the doors Ethan had disappeared through. Beside me, the man in the black suit, Julian, sat calmly, like he belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. His presence still unsettled me, not because he seemed dangerous, but because he seemed to know things. He kept his voice low, gentle, deliberate. "He's going to confront her," he murmured. "Your son isn't as blind as she thinks." I swallowed hard. I don't want him fighting with his own wife because of me. This is his wedding day. Julian tilted his head. "And yet she wanted to hide you. That wasn't about protecting him. That was about controlling him." I didn't know how to respond to that. So I sat silently, staring at the swirling designs on my plate. My heart felt heavy, but not because of embarrassment anymore. It was grief, mixed with something sharper, betrayal. I had raised Ethan alone. I had worked double shifts, taken side jobs, skipped meals just so he wouldn't. I didn't expect luxury, but I also didn't expect to be treated like a burden. A burst of laughter came from the bar area. Guests didn't know anything was wrong. Or maybe some did, and simply chose to ignore it. High society weddings were good at pretending. Julian leaned closer. "When they come back, stay calm. Let the truth fall where it may." I turned to him. "Why are you helping me? You're practically a stranger." He smiled faintly. "Your son is important, and because he deserves the whole truth, not a version of it sculpted by someone who fears appearances more than she values people." Before I could ask him what that meant, Ethan finally re-entered the ballroom. His face was pale, jaw clenched, eyes burning like he'd just run through a storm. The guests at the nearest tables murmured, sensing tension. He scanned the room, spotted me, and walked quickly toward row 14. Madison followed a few steps behind, her expression tight and defensive. Ethan stopped in front of me. "Mom," he said, voice thick, "can you come with me?" I stood shakily. "Ethan, what's going on?" He exhaled slowly. "I talked to Madison. I asked her why she seated you here. She said you being near the front would ruin the photos. She said you were dressed too simply, that you'd draw attention in a negative way." His voice cracked on the last few words. My heart dropped. Hearing it directly, out loud, felt like a punch. Madison crossed her arms. "Ethan, this is our wedding. Our pictures will last forever. I was trying to make sure everything looked cohesive." He stared at her stunned. "Cohesive? Mom is family. She should have been in the front row. You hit her like she was an inconvenience." Guests were openly watching now, tension rippling through the tables. Madison hissed, "Lower your voice." But Ethan didn't. "No, not this time. I've been overlooking things for months, but not today." Julian rose beside me, then smoothing his suit jacket, giving Ethan a respectful nod. It was the first time Ethan really noticed him. Confusion crossed his face. "Mom?" Ethan asked slowly. "Who is he?" Madison's eyes flashed with something between panic and fury. "Yes," she snapped, "that's what I'd like to know too. Why is some strange man sitting with your mother? Why did you look terrified when you saw them together?" Ethan turned to Julian, wary. "Sir, do we know each other?" Julian's expression stayed unreadable. "Not yet, but we will." Madison scoffed. This is ridiculous. Is this some dramatic stunt? A sympathy act? Are you trying to ruin our wedding?" Ethan glared at her. "Stop talking." She froze. He turned back to Julian. "Why did you sit with my mom?" Julian considered him for a moment. "Because she was alone. Because she was placed in the worst seat in the room. And because someone needed to witness it." Ethan's breathing became uneven. Witness? Exactly? Julian reached into his inner pocket, pulling out a small black envelope. He held it between two fingers and offered it to my son. "When you're ready, open this. Not now, not here, but soon." Madison took a step back. "What is that?" "Ethan, don't take anything from him. He's clearly trying to manipulate." But Ethan ignored her and took the envelope. Julian nodded once. "Congratulations on your wedding, Ethan. I hope you build something real, something honest." Then he stepped away, disappearing through the side exit before anyone could stop him. A long silence settled over the room. Madison grabbed Ethan's arm. "You're not seriously giving this any attention. He's some random liar trying to stir drama." Ethan pulled his arm free. "Mom would have sat alone all night if he hadn't sat with her. You didn't even check on her." Madison's face twisted. "Because I had responsibilities. Because this wedding is important. And my mother isn't?" That time, she didn't answer. Ethan turned to me, eyes softening, guilt poured across his features. "Mom, I'm so sorry." My chest tightened. "Ethan, sweetheart, you shouldn't apologize for someone else's choices." He shook his head. "No, I let things slide. I let her talk me out of inviting you to fittings, rehearsals, even the pre-wedding dinner. I thought she had good reasons. I didn't realize she was trying to erase you." Madison gasped. "Ethan, that's not what I—" But Ethan had already made his decision. He reached for my hand gently. "Come on, Mom, you're staying with me for the rest of the night. I'm done pretending." He led me toward the front of the ballroom. People whispered. Madison stood frozen. and the black envelope in Ethan's pocket felt like the beginning of something bigger, something none of us were prepared for. The ballroom doors had barely closed behind the last guest when Adrian approached me with the gentleness I hadn't felt from him in years. His new wife, Bianca, stood at his side looking as if she'd rather be anywhere else. But for once, Adrian didn't look at her for approval. His eyes stayed on me. "Mom, can we talk privately?" he asked. Bianca immediately stepped forward. "Adrian, your parents-in-law are waiting for us." He cut her off. "They can wait." For a moment, she blinked, stunned. It was the first crack in her perfect, icy composure. Adrian gestured for me to walk with him toward a quiet corridor at the back of the venue, away from the glittering chandeliers and the murmurs of wealthy families. When we reached the hallway, he exhaled shakily. "Mom, I'm sorry. For everything." The words landed heavily. I had waited years for my son to say that. He continued, his voice trembling. "I didn't know Bianca told the coordinators to seat you far away. I didn't know she told the staff you were an image problem. I only found out when I saw you in row 14 and the man beside you. Something felt wrong. It hit me all at once. That man, the stranger in the black suit who sat beside me, had changed everything." I nodded gently. "He only said he didn't like seeing anyone disrespected." Adrian swallowed. "I want to meet him. Thank him." I hesitated. "I don't know who he is. He walked me out after the ceremony, then said, 'Your son will come find you.' And he vanished before I could even ask his name." Adrian looked shaken. "Mom, whoever he was, he did what I should have done." Silence settled between us. Then, suddenly, Bianca appeared at the end of the hallway, her heels snapping sharply against the marble floor. "There you are," she said coldly. "Adrian, we have responsibilities. Press photos, family introductions. This isn't the time for—" She flicked to me, full of disdain. "Distractions." Adrian straightened, and for the first time that evening, I saw a steel in his expression. "Bianca," he said quietly, "my mother is not a distraction." She stared at him as though he'd betrayed her. He continued before she could interrupt. "Sit with us for a moment. There's something we need to clear." Bianca's lips tightened. "Fine, but make it quick." We sat on a velvet bench in the corridor, me on one side, Bianca on the other, Adrian in between us. The air was thick with tension. Adrian turned to her. "Why did you move my mother? Why didn't you seat her with me?" She scoffed. "Because this wedding is being photographed and circulated everywhere. Your mother came in a dress from a thrift store. It's the nicest thing I own." She ignored me. "And I will not have people whispering that your wife allowed a shabby-looking guest to sit in front." Adrian's jaw clenched. "That guest is my mother." She folded her arms. "And I'm your wife. My job is to protect the image of this marriage." Adrian stood abruptly. "If you think image matters more than people, then we have a much bigger problem." Her eyes widened. "Are you threatening me on our wedding day?" He stated the truth firmly. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Bianca leaned back with a cold smile. "You're only reacting because some stranger sat beside her. You wouldn't be this dramatic otherwise. You always take the sentimental route." Adrian turned to me. "Mom, I should have seen all of this earlier. I'm ashamed." I reached for his hand. "You were busy building a life. I understand." But then something happened that none of us expected. A shadow appeared at the far end of the corridor. The man in the black suit. He approached quietly, hands in his pockets, eyes calm. Bianca straightened immediately, her expression shifting to guarded curiosity. Adrian stared silently, clearly recognizing him from earlier. The man stopped in front of us. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to ensure everything turned out the way it should. Adrian rose to his feet. "Who are you?" He smiled faintly. A friend. Of your mother. I frowned. But I don't know. He shook his head gently. Not in the way you think. Then he turned to Bianca. Your wedding was beautiful, but beauty means nothing if the heart behind it is ugly. Bianca stiffened. Excuse me? He tilted his head slightly. A marriage built on shame cannot stand. Adrian whispered, Why do you care? He placed a hand on my shoulder. Because she deserves respect. There was something in his voice, an old familiarity, a pain, a story I didn't yet know. But before I could ask, he stepped back. It's time, he murmured. Adrian reached out. Wait, what's your name? He paused. He looked at me one last time and answered only 2 words. Ask your father. The world fell still. My heart stopped. Adrian's eyes widened. Bianca looked confused and suddenly afraid. But when we blinked, even for a second, the man was gone, vanished, leaving us in a hallway full of secrets. And a truth I hadn't spoken aloud in 25 years. A truth about a man Adrian had never met. A truth that might shatter everything. The room froze after Daniel's confession. His voice shook, but his eyes were steady, the kind of steady that comes from years of finally reaching the breaking point. Isabella opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her father shot her a sharp look, silently warning her to stay quiet, but the damage was already spreading like cracks in glass. Daniel stepped toward me, not rushing, but deliberately, as if he was reclaiming each step he had let others take away from him. Mom, he said quietly, I'm sorry. I should have protected you from this a long time ago. I felt my throat tighten. All I managed was a whisper. Son, you don't have to apologize for loving the wrong people. Someone behind Isabella cleared their throat, a guest trying to pretend they weren't witnessing a family fracture in real time. But the room was far too quiet now, far too attentive. Isabella finally snapped. So what? You'll throw away everything because your mother got emotional and some stranger sat next to her? Every eye swung to her, even her own father's. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You insulted my mother. You humiliated her. You lied to me about her. And you expected me to call that love. Isabella's jaw clenched. You are going to regret this. Daniel gave a small, tired laugh. No, the real regret would be letting this continue. Before Isabella could spit another word, Marcus stepped forward, the quiet man in the black suit who started all of this. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. He said, I wasn't sure if today was the right moment, but I think it is. He handed it to me. My hands trembled as I slid a finger under the flap. Inside was a letter and a photograph. I gasped. Daniel leaned over my shoulder. Mom, what is it? I looked up at Marcus, really looked at him, and suddenly noticed the familiar shape of his jaw, his eyes, something I couldn't place earlier because I was too humiliated to truly see him. The letter said only one sentence. I've been looking for you for 35 years. Daniel's voice cracked. Mom, who is he? Marcus's eyes softened. I'm your brother. The room erupted, guests whispering, some gasping, some staring so hard their eyes might fall out. Isabella took a step back, stunned into silence for the first time all night. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My knees almost buckled. Daniel caught my arm just before I fell. A brother. A brother I never knew. A brother who somehow found me. A brother who sat beside me without knowing who I was, just to keep me from feeling alone. Tears filled my eyes as the truth crashed over me. Marcus whispered, voice trembling, "I found out who you were this morning, and when I saw the way they treated you, I couldn't let you sit alone." I covered my mouth, overwhelmed. Daniel stared between us, shock giving way to fierce protectiveness. "Mom, you're not alone anymore," he said softly. Then he turned to Isabella, "And I will never let anyone treat you like that again." The wedding atmosphere shattered completely, but something else, something stronger, formed in its place. A family finally beginning to heal, and another being exposed for what it truly was. The ballroom lights dimmed as the final dance ended, but the real ending, the one that mattered, was unfolding quietly in the family suite upstairs. Lucas closed the door gently behind us, leaving the noise and glitter of the reception far away. He sat beside me, shoulders tense. "Mom, everything you went through today, everything Evelyn said and did, I'm so sorry." His voice cracked. "I didn't see it. That's my failure." I touched his hand. "Seeing it now is what matters." He inhaled deeply, as if preparing to tear open the last wound. "I told Evelyn I'd annul the marriage if she ever humiliates you again. She tried to argue, said you were exaggerating." He shook his head. "I told her she embarrassed me, not you." Warmth spread through my chest. My son was finally mine again. Then Mr. Harrow, the man who changed everything, walked in. "Thought you might want an update," he said. "She's already moved out of the bridal suite. Took the necklace, though." He smirked. "Tacky girl." Lucas groaned. "She can keep it. I just want her gone." Mr. Harrow turned to me. "As for you, Mrs. Hale, my job here is done." "What job?" I asked. He smiled slightly. "To make sure you weren't alone on the worst day of your life." I blinked fast, emotion tightening my throat. "But why help me?" "Because," he said, "the world needs witnesses when good people are treated badly. And sometimes it needs someone loud enough to make the right person notice." Lucas stood, offering me his hand. "Come on, Mom. You're staying with me tonight. No more row 14. No more being pushed aside." As we walked out of the suite together, me, my son, and the man who stepped in when no one else did, I realized something. I didn't lose anything today. I gained my son back. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel poor. I felt valued.